New York, a city that's been through a lot, today was host to a uniquely extraordinary moment in American history. The first day in the first ever criminal trial for an American ex-president is now in the books. Court adjourned a little bit ago, but earlier the morning started with the judge's review of pending motions having to do with what jurors will or will not be allowed to see and hear once that body of jurors is assembled. In fact, that's what was developing moments ago, the process of jury selection. It's a process that could take weeks, involving lawyers from both sides selecting 12 jurors and 6 alternate jurors. The task is to determine the fate of one Donald Trump, who's charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records. They stem from hush money payments that were made to porn star Stormy Daniels in the lead up to the 2016 election and the subsequent effort to cover them up. Now, as the disgraced ex-president comes to grips with how the case is set to proceed and just how often he's required to attend his own trial in court, the rest of us are left to settle in and watch legal accountability play out for someone for whom it was an open question whether it ever would. Because as we said, history is playing out right now as we sit here. It's where we start the hour with some of our favorite experts and friends. Former Deputy Assistant Attorney General for National Security, MSNBC legal analyst Mary McCord is here. Plus, former top official at the Department of Justice and MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissmann is here. Together, they are the co-hosts of the Prosecuting Donald Trump podcast. Also joining us, the former lead investigator for the January 6th Select Committee, Tim Heaphy, and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, who has been inside the courthouse today for the network. Our eyes and ears. Lisa Rubin, we start with you.
Nicole, today was an interesting day like I've never really expected to see before. And that's because the former president is finally, at long last, sitting before a judge hearing one of his criminal trials. That's a day that many of us never expected would come, least of all in this case. Where we left off at 4:30 p.m. today, the judge has posed a number of these questions on the jury questionnaire to a number of prospective jurors, and they sort of read like a little bit of a nursery rhyme. We were left at the end of the day with a bookseller, with an oncology nurse, with someone who works for FanDuel, the online sports gambling site, and others. Of the folks that have been asked to leave so far, only one didn't self-identify. Rather, she said that she had strong opinions or firmly held beliefs about the former president. And at that point, Judge Merchan wanted to recuse her. That's when the DA's office said that was fine with them, but former President Trump's lawyers wanted to hear further. And I suspect that was for one of two reasons. Either they wanted to hear if she was favorable to them and then plead for her to remain, or more likely, they want to support their motion for a change of venue to say that former President Trump couldn't possibly get a fair trial in Manhattan due to people like this prospective juror. So they wanted her to elaborate on those firmly held opinions. The other thing, Nicole, that we saw a lot of today is lots of argument about what evidence will be allowed in the case, really enabling the DA's lawyer, Joshua Steinglass, to outline what evidence they plan to rely on during the trial. And as I said earlier in the day, this is going to be a much more documentary, evidentiary-heavy case than we previously thought. I think most of us are preparing for the second showdown of Michael Cohen and Donald Trump. But in actuality, what we might get is quite a bit of email, checks, ledgers, things like that that help show that the story Michael Cohen has been telling us all along is one that many other people's hands touched along the way.
Yeah, I mean, Lisa, that's been one of those things that the trial brings into focus, right? There's been almost an extraneous debate about Michael Cohen's credibility. Obviously, Alvin Bragg was aware of that, and a lot of criticism for Alvin Bragg, frankly, on the pacing of this. But it's clear that when you look at the witness list and you look at what Sue Craig and yourself, people who've covered this, have said, the case that will be presented to the jurors is a documents case.
Yes, but on that point, Nicole, there was a major victory for the DA's office today with respect to Michael Cohen. And that is what Michael Cohen is allowed to say about the circumstances of his trial criminal prosecution. The Trump folks wanted Michael Cohen to be able to talk on cross-examination about other crimes that he pled guilty to, notably pleading guilty to lying before Congress, for example, or pleading guilty to tax fraud, something that he has since disavowed and said he did really only to save his family. But they said they had no intention of questioning him about his guilty plea to campaign finance violations and believed it had no relevance here. That's when the DA's office said, for context, to understand Michael Cohen's role in this case, not only does he have to talk about the underlying facts of his campaign finance violation, which, as you know, dovetails with the facts that will be alleged at this case, but more importantly, they said that Michael Cohen needs to be able to tell the jury here that he pled guilty so that they understand that as a cooperator, there was a period of time that Michael Cohen might have disavowed the things that he did for Donald Trump, but no longer.
Andrew Weissmann, I know you've been on TV a lot of today, and I watched you. But if you take a step back, as this first day, and there seem to be some takeaways. One, it has sunk in based on Donald Trump's body language. He's not a good poker player. It's clear that there was plenty to complain about in the way the day ended, with not being excused to go listen to the Supreme Court arguments. And a big loss. I mean, you look at the Access Hollywood tape. The tape itself wasn't permitted, but the transcript was. And that managed to do a lot of damage to Donald Trump in the E. Jean Carroll civil trial.
Yeah, I think stepping back, I agree with Lisa. This is a day that is a long time coming. And remarkably, it's a long time coming with the prosecution trying to get to trial, and Donald Trump, who should, if he's running for office and this is a witch hunt, you would think he'd want the case to clear his name. But I think for America, this shows we can do this. I've written about the fact that we think of this as so exceptional and of course for America it is, but we are not the first country, even a sort of so-called, Western democracy that has held political leaders to account. It happens in France, in Italy, even in Israel with more or less success, and in Argentina, where people have been held to account, and you do these trials. And you know what? This case, it opened today, and you know what? The earth didn't fall in. There were not riots and people saying this is not the rule of law and saying that we can't. This is a good sign so far for the fact that this is the justice system. You see the prosecution and a very experienced defense team, which is as it should be, doing a case. And to Vaughn's point, this is a place where truth, facts, law should still matter. The political issue is one that people will deal with depending on what their verdict is. But in terms of what happens, this is people in America seeing the rule of law apply to someone, even if they had the most exalted position in our government.
Well, and what's interesting about this case, and I've said this a few times now, is these are facts that Trump doesn't embrace, the way he embraces the crimes he's alleged to have committed in Jack Smith's election interference case. He's running basically as simpatico with the insurrectionists. He honors them at the beginning and the end of his rallies. He's talking about pardoning them. He has no apologies for the danger that befell Mike Pence. He has embraced what he's charged with doing on January 6th. Mar-a-Lago, his defense is when you're president, they let you do it. He is not running as a guy who gleefully had sex with Stormy Daniels or Karen McDougal and then paid his friends at the National Enquirer to cover it up.
Yeah, I mean, I find that really plays into the theme that I think you're going to hear from the state when they have their opening argument, that it's easy to say it's hush money, or it's easy to say this is election interference. But I think you go a little deeper to what does it mean? What was he trying to portray? He has created a picture in 2016 of who he is. It's a little, now it's quite a tarnished picture, but at the time he was running as a religious guy who, like, he embraces the Bible and he wants the anti-abortion vote, and he was like, this is not an amoral hedonist. That was not his ticket. And it's interesting to me now that he is not embracing that. He is not saying, you know what, that's who I am. And you have a guy who's selling Bibles on air. And so he is not saying to his base, you know what, I am amoral. I am a hedonist. I do engage in this conduct. This is still one place where he has drawn some kind of line, which is interesting in terms of his persona. And so there could be real potential damage here, because I think whether the jury finds him guilty or not, I think there will be substantial evidence about the scheme and the nature of it, and that it wasn't even just about Stormy Daniels. There was a whole effort that I think we're going to learn about to portray him in a light that is far better than the reality, as well as to denigrate his opponents in a way that they didn't deserve either.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.